Thanks, Garrett. Very cool. All right, let's bring on No Foolin Tulin, who he is a writer for newrightnetwork.com. I've heard of them before. He's got a good article up there from last month about what's going on with Israeli politics and the religion of peace. I think this was actually written during the holy month of Ramadan, where the bombathon goes insane. So welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, glad to be on. And am I actually the first Jew that is supporting God Emperor Trump being on his show and being like, hey, I want to send you shekels?
Well, we do have one in the audience who literally donates. His name is Gideon, and he is an Hispanic Jew, and he literally donates in shekels. I think he may be the first one who has appeared on the show. And actually, fun story, one of the earliest guys who was a supporter of the page, and he used to have his own page, and I think he's I don't know, but he was an Israeli from Israel, and he served in the armed forces. And this is what I don't understand, and no, obviously no offense to anyone in Israel, especially not the people who serve down there. That cannot be an easy job.
Yeah, that's okay. They're required to serve in Israel, by the
Right.
way. I became a citizen at a point where I was too old to be drafted. So, yeah, I did not actually serve in the IDF. My little sister did, though. She was actually a translator for the head of the Navy,
Well, and so
some crazy thing like that.
my understanding is that the culture is a little different down there. And what is the cutoff age for being required to serve in the IDF?
Oh, I think it's like about, I don't know. It's younger for women, the cutoff age. I'd say it's like probably about like 25 for men and 22 for women or something like that. I immigrated to Israel when I was 27, and I turned 28 while in the immigration process. I actually almost got deported from Israel 3 times. Took me 9 months to immigrate. I went through the process. I did everything, by the books. I'm supposed to do it and everything. It's tough to immigrate to another country.
So, in other words, you are
And
not an illegal immigrant. Well,
I'm
congratulations on
not
it.
an illegal immigrant at all. Um, I did actually spend about a year homeless in Israel because I was sued for my dad's medical bills. Yeah,
That sounds like
and
a
that sucked. And I probably could have, looking back on it, I probably could have been homeless for like about 2 weeks and not spent a year in Israel being homeless. But I was just so adamant that like I didn't want to be one of those immigrants to Israel that leaves within 3 years. There's actually a huge statistic that most immigrants that go to Israel, within 3 years they leave because it's just so tough living there and adjusting to
Now,
the
what
culture
makes
and
it
all of
tough?
that.
Is it just the fact that it's a capitalist economy? Is it that there's not a lot of social net to pick you up like there is in the United States? Is it the violence? What makes it tough to live in Israel?
I'd say the social net probably, and we're getting better at that. There's a group of people that helped me out keep Olim in Israel movement. Olim is the plural for immigrants in Hebrew. Um, and I mean, they were quite nice and everything. There's like a whole news article written about me. Like if you Google Chaz Tulin, you'll find it. Um, and how they helped me out. I still have those sneakers that are mentioned in the article. They're good sneakers.
So that's actually fascinating to me. How long ago was this?
This was like actually 2000, around the 2016, 2017 area. I was homeless in Israel and not able to vote in the 2016 elections. And, it was, what made me cry the day after when Trump got elected, I went to the soup kitchen and there was this Israeli guy who loved to talk to me about politics because he figured out that I was an American and all that and, spoke English and stuff. I was like basically the only English speaker at this soup kitchen. I went to the soup kitchen, this like he's like an elderly guy. He's not homeless, but he's like basically living on government assistance and all that. And he just looks at me after Trump gets elected and he says to me, "Thank you, America."
Wow.
I nearly cried. I nearly cried.
Well, and of course, I mean, maybe you can help kind of go, because a lot of people don't understand, like the Golan Heights, which Israel has had essentially since what, the 1960s, like 62?
Oh yeah, I was there in April actually. I was in the Golan Heights in April. Visited a friend out there,
And people
it's
don't
very
understand,
beautiful.
like, I mean, I maybe you're not the best historian, but give us, like, explain to us the dynamics of what goes on down there, where they are constantly under threat, they're constantly being pushed back, they're literally threatened with
Yeah, I
eradication.
think I explained that. I remember saying on your show one time, like in a Facebook comment, I was like, Israel's the Texas of the Middle East, and the Golan Heights is like the Texas of Israel. I mean, like when I visited my friend up there, I basically was like, dude, if I was living up here, I would own a gun. And he said to me, friend, if there is ever an invasion from Syria, follow me to the public bunker where there's a bunch of arms and grab a gun, and I hope you know how to shoot.
Well, and it was the Golan Heights where they named a there it is. I've got the article up on Big League Politics. They named a town after President Trump. My understanding is it's going to be named Kiryat Trump or something along those lines, which I think.
Kiryat, that would be like Trump Village.
Right, I was going to say it's
in
literally
Hebrew.
called Trump Town, which ironically,
Trump Village, Trump Village, Trump Village.
All right, we'll do Trump. I like Trump Town better because the name of the font was.
Yeah, or Trump Town. I guess it could Kiryat could translate just as well to town as well as village.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
So and
Fair
I
enough.
mean Trump, people get so wrapped up into the Israel thing and right wing movements, and I think it's because everybody, the people who are alt right, I think it's probably 10%, if that, of the Trump online base, and I think they think that they're closer to 80 to 90%, and it's just not true, and they always get.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough being a right-wing Jew because everybody just assumes that you're a leftist all the time. And I actually started like a fake internet nation called Kekriel, um, just for right-wing Jews that had to flee Kekistan.
The diaspora, the second diaspora.
Yeah, the second diaspora. Yeah, that's basically what it is. Like we're refugees of refugees.
Well, and you bring up something
Like,
that's interesting.
and I don't know, I haven't really brought it back. Like I was talking about it on Gablot and stuff back in the day. I haven't really brought it back, but I'm thinking about bringing back Kekriel.
Well, and you bring up something interesting, which is that for some reason Jews in Israel are much bigger fans of President Trump for some reason than Jews in, say, New York. I mean, what is your thought on that? Is it because they're secular, or what's your thought?
All right. Well, a lot of the Jews outside of Israel are freaking lefties, and it fucking sucks. I hate it. Like my synagogue in the U.S., I know that like most of the people there are on the left, and it's terrible. There's really not much I can do about it, and I'm kind of.
But why do you think that is? I mean, they're supporting the party that has the Hamas caucus with Congresswoman alleged brotherfucker and
like,
Congresswoman motherfucker. I mean, it makes no sense.
Is aligned with Hamas, and they get money from Kair, who also supports Hamas, and these Hamas people, like I moved to Israel just in time to live through rockets being fired on me, like in 2014, and that was interesting, being in Tel Aviv because Iron Dome protected me pretty well. I heard all these rocket blasts going off and all that, air raid sirens and stuff. I actually slept through one of the air raid sirens and didn't get to a bomb shelter, properly in time for that. But Iron Dome does like a lot to protect people, and just wow, we would be like fucked if we didn't have something like that. And I do know that it's like kind of a joint thing between the U.S. and Israel with the way that it was developed and all that. The U.S. actually wants to use it to, for more like, I'd say, offensive things, um, just to defend soldiers who are on the field in offensive places, I guess, is like what the U.S. wants to use it for.
Well, and that actually brings us to the article you wrote a month or so ago in May 5th in New Right Network. I'm going to pull that on screen right now. Hamas, terrorism, and escalation.
Wow, I'm impressed.
So tell us about, I mean, you kind of do a little background of what was happening at the time and the terrorism that just happens to coincide. So give us the basic gestalt.
Yeah, the holidays, geez, like basically, Ramadan happened to happen around Israeli Independence Day this year. And I don't think I talked about that too much in my article about Ramadan, actually. I probably should have. But there's also like some other Palestinian like alternative holidays, I would say, to coincide with the Israeli independence and all that. They refer to it as the Nakba, or, in Arabic, that's the catastrophe. And I will say it was kind of a catastrophe for everybody. I have relatives that fought in 1948, distant relatives, but I consider them, to be close family. But and nobody wanted to fight that fight. Like, Jews and Arabs were getting along with each other before that and everything. Nobody wanted to fight that. It's kind of like the UN forced it on us. And that's just the way it's been in Israel for a long time, where the UN, the EU, the US, all these outside foreign powers are just influencing our politics. And we just want everybody out. Like, whether you're Jewish or Arab or disagree with each other and all that, like, yeah, fuck it. Get all these foreign people out, and we can solve things ourselves.
So, and I would be remiss, and this isn't necessarily my personal view. I want to be clear on that but I know where the comments are going to go without even looking at them. So, I mean, I respect that, because you look, the UN is no friend of Israel. The UN they routinely crap all over Israel. They put countries like Saudi Arabia on the Women's Rights Council, so they have a platform against Israel.
Crapping on Israel. It's like, more than half of the resolutions against countries are against Israel. It's like ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, people who are in the know, it's actually kind of comical what happens, but. I mean, I respect what you're saying, and I agree with what you're saying, and I'm going to add my own caveat that the United States gives billions of dollars to all kinds of, just about every country on the planet.
Oh, I actually voted for a party in Israel, Zahut. They want to end the U.S. Military aid, and I'm using that in quotes, the aid, because it's not aid to Israel, it's aid to the U.S. Weapons corporations. It's aid to the U.S. military-industrial complex.
So if I want to...
that money can only be spent in the U.S.
Right. So if I want to Google that, what should I search?
So the main people getting that money are Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, all those big weapons corporations. All right? And they are the ones lobbying to increase the aid to Israel, because that way they get more money.
So is that the Israel Resilience Party? What should I look for to find that?
Zahut. ZahutInternational.com is the best English site, I would say, for them.
All right, help me out with spelling here.
ZEHUT and then international.com.
So I'm fascinated by this. So now, and that is something that I actually did not realize.
Really, Moshe Feigelin's the head of it, and I'm pissed off that they didn't get into the Knesset. And with all these we're having repeat Israeli elections right now. And I don't think people realize, this is the first time it's ever happened in Israel, and like how serious it really is. It's like basically imagine a situation in the U.S., I guess, where remember what the Democrats were trying to do with the electoral votes? They were trying to basically cause like the electoral college to, have to vote again a second time by having Trump not have over 50% of the
Right,
votes.
right, right.
Remember that? Yeah, that's basically what just happened in Israel. Except that in this situation, everybody in the country has to vote again. It's like,
Now, is
it
this
like
Netanyahu's?
I
Hold
went
on,
in
I've
April
got.
to go to Israel to visit my dad in a nursing home and also to vote there.
Wow. So I've got to ask.
And
This is the major election that just happened, where Netanyahu received, I think, his third term. Is that what we're talking about here? There's a second vote because they didn't like the
third
outcome.
term, I think this is like his fourth term. He's been prime minister, I think, actually longer than Ben Gurion was prime minister. Ben Gurion was the first prime minister of Israel, and also the third prime minister of Israel. Um, Israel has like very interesting politics, the way, I mean, a very interesting system, the way people vote for things and
But
the
this
way
is
things
that
work.
election. They're essentially trying to invalidate his election. What's happening right now?
Yeah, I mean, they're trying to invalidate the election as a whole, and I guess, I mean, to be quite honest, really, if you lowered the election threshold to get into the Knesset back to where it was before, then you would have had a couple of right-wing parties in there voting for Netanyahu to be the prime minister, and we wouldn't have this situation. Like, basically, when you have Israeli elections, you elect the Knesset. The Knesset is 120 people. They vote for who is going to be the next prime minister, and typically that's the person who is the majority. He wins the most votes out of everybody, typically. All right, that's actually always how it has happened when it's happened by a vote.
So that's similar.
Um,
It's not too dissimilar from the Electoral College. I think people can kind of understand that. So what do they? I mean, what is the
yeah.
reasoning
So
behind
these,
this? And I guess I gotta actually before we even get into that, I have to ask about this party. I just found an article. Let me read just briefly here. This is at IsraelNationalNews.com. During the last elections, how do I say the name again? Zahut.
Zehut,
Zehut
yeah,
may have been the only party in Israel which advocated ending American foreign aid to Israel. That's the words they're using. While the elections are clearly over and Zehut will not be in
yes,
the next Knesset, its stance for reducing or eliminating American financial aid to Israel is one that should be adopted by the ruling coalition. This, according to, again, Israel National
yeah,
News.
and Israelis are pissed off about this on their end. I mean, on the U.S., I basically explained how it's basically money laundering with the military-industrial complex. On the Israeli end, it's actually hurting, local Israeli weapons industry because money is not being spent on them.
So basically, the way I'm understanding this is globalists in America giving money to globalists in Israel so they can spend the money with globalists in America.
It's globalists in America giving money to globalists in America so that Israel can have fancy things. That's basically what it is.
Fascinating. So
Um,
now, so because that
yeah,
answers the question, which I'm sure is in the comments, you would say no financial aid in this form, whatever. If they want to do the relief like they do in Uganda and everywhere else, Israel doesn't even need that. That would be like giving financial aid to Germany. Well, Germany probably could use that at this point. It'd be like giving financial aid to Poland. It doesn't make sense. And to just give them money so that you can then turn around, Israel can just turn around and spend that money on the arms industry, the military industrial complex, which President Trump recently called out in an interview.
all right, Israel can only spend that money in America, so they're only spending it in the U.S.
So it's
Like,
essentially we're giving money
I'm
to
all
Israel
for
so our arms
trade with
industry can get more
Israel, all
money.
for trade, like, exchange of money voluntarily and all that. But, you know, the whole aid thing, whenever you have something called aid. It ends up uh, going into the pockets of people that, you know, you do not want benefiting from this. And right now, that aid is going into the pockets of, Raytheon and Lockheed Martin. Like, they are the main receivers of Israeli aid, is Raytheon and Lockheed Martin.
That that is absolutely fascinating. I appreciate you giving that insight. I don't think that a lot of people knew that. I knew of this in the basics, but I didn't know this in the detail. And I definitely didn't know that this party actually existed, which it literally has on their website that they
Yeah,
want
and we
USA
need to
to be
promote
stopped.
that. Like, do you want someone from that party on your show? Because, like, I actually do know someone from that party. Like, I can probably get him on or something like that for a more extended thing
That could be
and to talk
interesting.
about the party.
Yeah, talk with give Garrett. Make
Yeah,
sure he's got your
he's
contact info, and we'll.
his name's Shlomo Gordon. He's an American, and if he does get elected to the Knesset, he will have to surrender his American citizenship. That is a rule in Israel. That if you are elected, you have to surrender all citizenships besides Israeli citizenship. Um, but yeah, he's a very interesting guy and very awesome guy too. Um, I went to his wedding shortly after the Israeli elections, just because he found out that I was in Israel and was there and everything, and he's like, "Hey, come to my wedding." And it's like, that's funny. This is the second time I'm like in Israel, and a friend is like, "Oh, hey, you're in Israel? Oh, hey, by the way, I'm getting married. You want to come to my wedding?"
They definitely seem more generous than the stereotypes would say. So, all right, so that's a lot of background information. Let's talk. I mean, just in wider terms. So
Yeah.
basically, you've got Israel Independence Day. You have these multiple events happening. It happens during Ramadan. The Western media did not, and I think that they're all taking John Kerry's advice. John Kerry a couple years ago said, "Stop reporting on terrorism. People need to be ignorant." And I think that the Western media is cooperating with him. But what was terrorism like in during Ramadan in Israel as they have their Independence Day and all of these things? What was that experience like? Was it insane? Was it not that bad? What happened?
It's just what I have to say about, like, you hear about school shootings all the time in the U.S., right? And if you watch the news in the U.S. about the school shootings, you'd think like, "Oh my God, I'm never going to send my kid to a school." Like, I'm correct about that, right?
That's definitely what Europe says, at least.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and if the thing is, I felt so safe in Israel. I felt so safe. I was like safer than I was in the U.S. because, like, I every time I go on the bus, I probably see like a person from the military, a little 19-year-old or something like that, with an automatic rifle strapped behind their shoulder. So I know that if a shooting breaks out, somebody is there to shoot the guy. And a shooting did happen while I was in Tel Aviv. And that guy was taken out very quickly.
Well, and that's one of the things that I don't think a lot of Americans understand is that when you're in the IDF, that rifle is basically with you for the entire time you serve, and they're literally walking around with what the left wing media would consider military style assault rifles most of the time.
That rifle is not with you all the time. It's with you when the IDF lets you have it, and I will say that is probably most of the time for most people, but not all people.
Well, and not when you're private citizens. I mean, that they have strict
Yeah.
gun laws, but
Oh, and they have strict. Yeah, and Zahoot also supports having something like the Second Amendment, which is also why I support them. I mean, my friend Shlomo Gordon, who's running in Zahoot, he's a reservist, a tank specialist. All right, they trust him. The Israeli government trusts him managing tanks, okay? But they want to go through this whole complicated bureaucracy in order for him to get a gun as a private citizen. And that's just fucking ridiculous. Like, you trust this guy with a tank and you're gonna, like, make it so that, you know, it's super hard for him to have a gun? That's ridiculous.
Well, and the leftists say the same thing here. They want the military, the veterans, to be disarmed because, well, they're more likely to have PTSD and all of these other things. So, well, all right. Well, I don't want to go too long tonight out of respect for Garrett, the slave producer. But I do want to say, so it sounds like this party did not do that great. It sounds like it's a populist party that's probably on the upswing
Yeah,
now.
they were expected to get like 13 seats or something like that, and they didn't even get a single seat. And that's extremely disappointing. And there's a lot of things with like vote manipulation that are being talked about. Uh, like certain villages where like we know people voted Zahoot in those villages. Zahoot got 0 votes in those villages. And Arab parties got votes in those villages, like almost in the exact number that Zahoot got party. It got it, like people voted Zahoot.
Right, you have this many people registered in the party,
Because
and there's that many
people
people
in
to vote
Zahoot
the
were watching
opposite
the vote.
side. I get what you're saying.
Yeah. So no one in these little Jewish villages would ever vote for an Arab party, to be quite honest. So like if you have like 100 votes for like an Arab party and you have 100 less votes for Zahoot, then there's something up there. There's something going on, and I think that them and the New Right Party that got slightly more votes than Zahoot, but also didn't make it into the Knesset. Um, I think that both those parties pretty much got the shaft with vote manipulation.
Well, and something that's talked about by lots of people I respect is, I mean, Israel has its own deep state. And, I don't know what your voting is like. Here, last election,
Yeah, that is true. We have a deep state, and by the way, in Hebrew they just call it the deep state now. We just phonetically spell it in Hebrew as deep state. Like, and yeah, like I'm glad that term like caught on in Israel.
that is fascinating.
Yeah, um, like I'm super happy. I don't know. There's like a site that's in Hebrew. It's like Conspil, Conspil. It's like basically like kind of the Alex Jones of Israel. It's all in Hebrew, so like I have to. I don't read Hebrew well enough to translate it without a translator, but like, wow.
Yeah, that is actually really
They were
fascinating.
even like talking about some of the Nexium stuff and all that,
Wow.
and like all those pedophile rings.
I mean, it is far-reaching. Patrick Halley at Big League is probably the biggest expert on Nexium that I've ever met, and he is absolutely the stuff he knows.
They operated around my area of New York, and my dad actually infiltrated them at one point and was talking to a blogger about them. And this blogger is still in jail. He'll be in jail until July 2020 because Nexium framed him with child porn. Yeah,
That is
like
horrifying.
they are dangerous people.
Well, now it's all coming out in court, and the media is being forced to report on it, which is I mean, it's astounding that it's creeping its way into the mainstream slowly but surely. Literal sex cults and bondage, and if the top people are
Yeah,
found
I'm
guilty,
glad. I've been following them over 10 years. Like, I mean, shit. I've been in the same room as Keith Raniere,
wow.
and it's just awful. Yeah, like, you know, I've been following them for a long time. I want them down. Like, Half Moon, New York is like 15 minutes south of me. Where the Nexium houses were. And I'm like, I'm so excited when Keith Raniere got arrested. in Mexico. Like, I just had to break out like a special bottle of beer and everything. And I'm sure other people are celebrating. My friend that's in jail, like he reached out to me through his family because he's in contact with them. That's how I contact him. And he was happy about it. It's just like everybody that has been working to take down Nexium for over a decade is just like so happy with what the Trump administration is doing to Nexium right now. We're like, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think many people realize that this is not, people have been working on this for a decade, some people more than a decade. Roger Stone tried to help take him down 10 years ago, and it's very difficult
My
if you
dad
don't have an
actually
AG.
met Roger Stone. My dad actually met Roger Stone while he was infiltrating Nexium, and he pretty much figured out that Roger Stone was kind of doing the same thing my dad was doing, like just figuring out more information about them.
Yeah, yeah.
And all that.
Well,
but my dad also met Hillary Clinton through Nexium.
Really?
And I'm just going to say that she's very deeply involved, and you're going to find out a lot about this as the case goes on.
That would be absolutely fascinating. I don't want you to say anything that'll get you in trouble, obviously, and obviously that's a guest saying that. But I do think that, I'm guessing that story is going to be absolutely fascinating, and I would be interested in hearing more off air and tersing out what parts of that are real. But I want to. Sorry, I'm checking out the. We've got one more caller coming up, so I want to give you the final. I want to give you the final word here, and somebody's telling me my audio is cutting out. I'm not sure if that's true. Is it fixed, Garrett? But I want to give you the final word. Give us kind of the basic gestalt of what it's like to be a Trump supporter in Israel versus a Trump supporting Jewish person in Israel versus a Trump supporting Jewish person in the United States, because it has to be incredibly difficult here, more so than halfway across the world, I would imagine.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting because being an American in a foreign country, everybody wants to talk to you about politics all the time because the whole world is actually concerned about our politics. Interesting. And, there's actually a lot more Trump supporters in Israel, and you realize, like, we had a huge rally in Jerusalem outside the Western Wall for Trump. And, did Hillary get a rally at all? No. No, Soros, I got ads on Facebook, actually, from a organization, I forget which, but I found out it was tied to Soros. And it was basically promoting people in Israel to register to vote absentee in order to vote Democrat and vote for Hillary. And I was just like, okay, well, you have all that. And I'm like, there's all these Israelis that are just supporting Trump. And I'm pretty sure any American that, moved to Israel is probably going to.
Well, see, and that's what's hilarious to me. You've got, in Israel, you've got all of this rabid Trump support. Then in the United States, Jews are supposed to hate Trump. Yeah, I know.
The United States has all the Jews that are lefty, and I'm just like, what the fuck is that? Like, why are they left wing?
Right.
It's bad for them. It's bad for them.
Yeah. No, it is. It literally is. Well, thank you. I'm glad we got you on tonight. I know last week we missed you, but you've dropped a ton of fascinating information. I had no idea that there is a Jewish political party that actually came close to getting people in that were anti-foreign aid. So thanks so much for coming on, man. I really do appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. Have me on whenever you want.
Absolutely. Call in again next week. We'll have you back on. So I don't know about you guys, but that was actually fascinating to me. I would have never guessed